Hello, welcome to CAI Report. My name is Stephen Shuey. I'm a past president with the Community Associations Institute in the Coachella Valley, California, and you're probably watching this show from someplace in Southern California where the CAI has chapters all over. The CAI is a national organization of homeowners associations, the managers who serve those associations, and all of the vendors and experts who help run the associations, basically. They take care of all the things that take care of the community you live in. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the governing documents of an association and particularly why it's important to amend those documents, to update those documents on a periodic basis. To get this accomplished, I've brought in our guest today, Mr. Wayne Guralnick of Guralnick and Gilliland. Wayne, welcome to our show today.
Morning, Steve.
Good to have you here. Wayne, to let the people know who you are an attorney for homeowners associations and you get involved in several committees actually at the state level, don't you?
Yes, I do. I am a representative of the California Legislative Action Committee for the Coachella Valley, as well as with the steering committee and the legislative committee for CACM, another trade organization. They represent community managers. And my job is to assist in interpreting the bills that pass through Sacramento, and to also get involved with the boards of directors and the managers to let them know if there's a bill that's both good, or sometimes we have bills which are not so good for both the industry and for the homeowners within a community.
Well, I'll tell you, when you talk about that, there's a lot going on in that legislative area. So you're probably busy with a lot of that.
Yes, we are. Actually, there was, like, for example, a bill that was proposed that would have added another tax to community associations, a bill proposed that was $10 every 2 years per unit to fund an agency. And for example, a Sun City Palm Desert with approximately 5,000 units, that could have cost them $50,000 every 2 years.
Something that may not be budgeted for.
Exactly. And luckily that did not get out of committee, but there is some other bills that are pending that are proposing a similar nature. So we watchdog that, and hopefully our legislatures, particularly in the Coachella Valley, are sensitive to the needs of the community. Well, and most of them are.
Okay, so help me out here. The fact is, as an attorney for the association, on occasion, attorneys like yourself get involved in fighting the homeowner who lives there because they're breaking the rule or some such thing. But more than that, people like you get involved in, you're the advocate for the homeowners who live in these communities, trying to get the laws that the legislature creates, get them done correctly so it helps the communities.
Oh, absolutely. My job as corporate counsel is to protect the interests of the entire community.
Right.
And not necessarily one individual, but what's best for the entire community.
Right.
So I look at this legislation from that perspective, and although it may at some point in time there might be an individual homeowner who may not agree what I'm advocating, I think if they looked at it from the big picture of what's best for the entire community, I think they might take a different view.
You know, it's funny, that's how it really has to be, doesn't it? In these associations where people live, it's not really a whole lot different than the larger communities before they had homeowners associations, but now they've got this local governance that helps make the community a better place to live. And all you attorneys are really doing is trying to help make that work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even back to the California Supreme Court case of Narstedt, which said that they look at the enforcement of the governing documents to the entire community as a whole, as distinguished from how it might impact one individual. And I think that's how you have to look at the entire community.
Yeah. You know, when we talk about these communities, the fact that there is this set of governing documents that were created, and many times by the developer who had this dream of how he thought the community ought to be shaped, and then all the homeowners move in and things change, demographics change, and rules and laws change that we just talked about. I mean, there's a lot going on with governing documents. I know in my case, we changed our governing documents just recently. It had been, we're now in the year 2006. It was 1978 when those documents were last amended and changed, and they were tired. They had some language in them that just didn't fit today's world. In fact, the people buying homes were having a real tough time understanding what they were reading because it didn't fit in.
That's exactly one of the reasons why you want to restate your CC&Rs and bylaws to make it easier for your homeowners to understand what are the rules, what are the covenants contained within their governing documents. A lot of these, back in the 70s and 80s, even early 90s, the documents being created initially are there to comply with the Department of Real Estate regulations, and they have a lot of, let's just say, lawyer-like language, which is difficult for homeowners to understand. They didn't have tables of contents, they didn't have indexes, They didn't even have captions, so it was difficult for people to understand what was being communicated.
Well, it was all legalese. It was awful.
Well, and homeowners associations, the most important thing is all about communication.
Right.
So if you have the basic constitution, the CCNRs, cannot communicate an idea to the homeowners, then you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So one of the basic reasons is to make them easier to understand and easier to access the information via table of contents, proper captions. But there are other reasons. The one that is near and dear to my heart is that with this hard insurance market, it's been very difficult for community associations who are required to insure for the areas where the homes are located, so-called master policy of insurance, to get a full replacement value policy, or became cost prohibitive. And also we had the issues of a lot of exclusions for mold claims and water intrusion claims.
Well, how does that tie into our CCNRs then, Wayne?
Exactly, in the old sets of CCNRs, it has a provision in the insurance provision saying that the association has an obligation, and the board in particular, to obtain a master policy for the full replacement value of all improvements contained within the residential areas.
So that because that was in the CCNRs, they were required to try to do that?
Not required to try, they were obligated to do it. And if it wasn't available, now we have this issue of this board having an obligation created in the CCNRs.
All right.
And unfortunately, let's say we have a catastrophic event. There was not full replacement value because the association, all they could get was a bare walls policy. And now we have cabinets that are not being potentially insured, other issues involving water intrusion or mold. And now we have an exposure to the board who didn't obtain the proper policy contained within the CCNRs. So we need to amend that out to create a provision saying that the minimum policy the board has to obtain is a bare walls policy. That's one of the issues that you're looking for. Another thing is that we were talking about legislation.
Yeah.
Well, it's been very active in the community association field, and since 1990, there have been many, many changes, so that the way the law was looked upon in 1990 doesn't have even a close resemblance to the way it looks now in 2006.
Well, that's what you and I were talking about with my governing documents. There were so many laws that weren't even listed in there. And I remember my comment to you many years ago was, what's the difference? They can go to the law book and look it up. But they don't ever do that, do they?
Oh, well, there are some, but most don't, and we can't expect them to do that. So we need to embrace these new laws and try to get them within the CCNRs and bylaws, so it's easier for the homeowners,
the buyers who are getting these communities,
or the new buyers, to understand what both their rights and their obligations in a community association. We all know that if you bought a standard home not in a community association, not within a common interest development, you'd get 100 bundles of sticks. But if you go into a community association, you get 90 bundles of sticks. You gave up 10 to the community association for, say, architectural control, maybe some parking issues and rules and regulations for the benefit of aesthetic control in the community, having the benefit of possibly, if it's gated, having the, if you will, the gate control access, and other things, the common area amenities. So that's a benefit of which now those homeowners have to give a little bit of those bundle sticks back and provide that to the community association to enforce the restrictions.
That's a great metaphor on how that really works when you move into a community, and a portion, you're giving up a portion, but you're receiving a portion of great benefit.
But getting back to those amending the CCNRs, the problem with it, people think it's an easy process, and it's not. The first thing you got to look at is the amendment provision in your existing CCNRs. As an example, a lot of them have the 75% of the entire membership approval requirement, and that could be extremely difficult to secure.
Let's talk about how we can get around that in just a moment. Meanwhile, we'll get back to that in just a moment. Let's listen to this short break.
CAI Report is brought to you by Bright & Clean Windows. Trust Southern California's favorite window cleaning company to provide consistent, quality window cleaning service to your home and office. Let Bright & Clean Windows make you look great by removing hard water stains from windows and shower door enclosures and by cleaning windows and mirrors to a gleaming shine. Call 346-9274.
Are you getting the most out of your banking relationship? At Community Association Bank, we exclusively serve community associations and professional management companies, saving you time by handling your banking transactions at your office. Community Association Bank. One bank, multiple options, maximum returns.
Hey Tim, what's this I hear about your sponsorship with CAI doing so well?
My sponsorship in the television show?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's one of the best things I've done for the CAI, besides being a volunteer, that is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So is it helping you?
Well, it's helping me and it's helping my bottom line. I'm getting customers and making money.
What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And you can have that opportunity too. Give a call to the CAI office so you can be a sponsor on our CAI report. The telephone number is 760-341-0559. Hello, Stephen Shuey here. I want to interrupt this program for just a minute before we go back to our regular show and talk to you, boards of directors members, just for a brief few minutes about something very important to you. And that is the hiring of licensed and insured contractors. It's extremely important when you're working in a homeowners association that all of the people who come to work on your property for the association are licensed and insured. You know, you can save money in some places in the budget, but you don't want to save money when it comes to a choice between one contractor or another. One's licensed, one's not, or one's insured and one's not. You really need to have licensed and insured contractors. The saving of a few dollars is not going to be worth it in the long run. Those people who have saved money because the party wasn't a licensed contractor have found that they end up with a job that's not quite satisfactory. It looks beautiful when it's first finished, but it doesn't last near as long as that job that might have cost a few more dollars and been done by a licensed contractor. The same thing applies to insured contractors. Wouldn't it be awful if somebody you hired, say, to do tree trimming, had fallen out of a tree and hurt themselves badly, and you come to find out they didn't have proper insurance? The association ends up paying for a long time to come. It's critically important. Always hire licensed and insured contractors. Thank you. Now back to our show. Welcome back. You're watching the CAI Report, and I'm here today with Wayne Guralnick of Guralnick and Gilliland. We're talking about the amending of governing documents, and as we broke away, Wayne, we had just gotten into this part about there's some problem with how many votes you have to get to make these amendments pass with the association. Explain that to us.
Well, for example, let's say you have a 1,000-unit subdivision and you have a 75% requirement of the entire membership, or requiring to get 750 affirmative votes.
Oh, so even to get these things changed, to start with, we have to get the membership to approve them. This is not something the board can do by themselves. The people get involved.
That is correct, and if you're having this high percentage, as we all know, there is voter apathy in almost everything we do, let alone an association election, so that if you have a 75% voting requirement, that would probably require you to do a bunch of things and get probably 95% of those who vote to approve it. And that's a very difficult road to hoe. So my suggestion is, if you're looking at a 75% requirement, and unless you have a really strong board who's going to come in and just knock on doors and try to get people excited about voting for this, which is a difficult proposition in itself, that you might want to consider reducing that percentage. And reducing that percentage to, say, maybe 55%, or even a majority of 50% plus one. So what you have to do is amend the amendment provision. And now that you're going to say is, well, how do you do that?
Let me hold on here so we understand what we're talking about, because all this tangling words here. We've got these governing documents, and in the governing documents there's a provision called the amendment, the ability to amend these documents.
Yes.
And it's that provision we're talking about, changing the requirement of voting so that we can amend these documents with fewer people actually saying, yes, it's okay to do it.
Well, we still have absolutely a majority requirement. Yes. And let's just say
and even 55% is a supermajority.
At 55% a supermajority, and that probably would require you to get probably 80% affirmative votes, because there are going to be a lot of people who do not vote, and that's probably a very reasonable requirement, 55%. Okay. But if you're at 75%, and let's just say, as an example, we want to amend that provision, and so we take it from 75% to 55%, but we don't get 75%. Well, there is a process in the Civil Code, in the Davis-Sterling Common Interest Development Act, which does permit you to petition the Superior Court if you get more than a majority, but less than that supermajority, and it's a fair and reasonable clause. The court can basically approve that amendment even though you didn't reach the 75% requirement.
Force the issue on the association because of that apathy. They step in and say, look, you got apathy problems, we'll get that problem solved for you.
I wouldn't say force, but it gives basically a remedy to those who don't vote. And in that regard, it's rare that the court wouldn't approve it. It would have to be a fairly unreasonable provision, and just reducing the amendment provision from 75% supermajority to 55% supermajority, the courts have generally found that to be very reasonable.
I've got to share with you, Wayne, and I'll share with the audience here too. When Wayne was talking to me with my association about doing that very thing, I remember telling you, Wayne, oh, it won't be a problem in our association. We'll get 75%, no problem. And Wayne said, no, Steve, the experience has been throughout the state of California, throughout the nation, that this doesn't work well. You need to lower that percentage. So we went along with it, and the board of directors at the Desert Island decided we'll take 60% because that's a better number for us than 55%. When we finished, we only got 68% of the people to vote. And I was sure we'd get more than that. So it really is, even in communities where we think we have this great community, there are problems. People simply don't vote. So getting those amendment provisions amended to a lower voting percentage is a greatly important thing.
Right, and then one other thing that's important is looking at both the amendment provision there's something called a lender protection clause. And particularly in the old sets, they require that in order to obtain amendments, you need to not only get the approval from the owners, but also the lenders. So you got to look at that too. There's ways around that.
The lender doesn't even live there. Why does he have to get involved in this at all?
Well, the old provisions, I would agree with you. The old provisions say any amendment requires lender approval, which is absurd. Nowadays, the lender protection provisions are to protect the lender, for example, making sure if they have to foreclose and become the owner, that they're only obligated to pay assessments from the date that they become the owner through the foreclosure sale. So there's some lender protection provisions that make sense.
I guess because they have the money interest.
Sure they do.
Yeah, okay. They need to be involved to a degree and they protect their interest.
Absolutely. You impact their insurance provisions,
right, okay,
and the like. So you got to look at those lender provisions also. Another reason you want to amend your governing documents is, and this is a popular one, to delete the developer provisions. There's a lot of provisions, confusing language, talking about Class A votes, Class B votes, Class C votes, and everyone's going,
who are all these classes?
Who are all the classes? Exactly. So, and in reality, once the developer's gone, there's only one class, and that's Class A vote, or one vote per each unit owned by that.
The homeowners themselves. That's
exactly.
The only ones.
So it confuses and mucks it up. So let's get rid of that. And there's some provisions for developer rights, like they have the right to put construction signs and real estate signs that are not operative anymore. Let's get rid of those things, because at some point in time, in a homeowner's, in association's history, there's this transition where it becomes from developer controlled to homeowner controlled.
Well, that's a topic all by itself.
It is, and sometimes that's angry, and some people are not happy with the developer, and they like to see those developer provisions gone. So that's another reason to amend your governing documents.
That's right. When the developer writes these documents, because he's got this idealistic dream about what he thinks the community ought to be, he also builds into it all these provisions that take care of him as a developer. And once he's gone, that is confusing language in there.
Well, him or her, but we'll get to another discussion. But yes, that's correct.
We'll be generically correct eventually.
And the last thing that I think is really important is, in most sets of CC&Rs, they talk about just language, words about maintenance responsibilities between an owner on the one hand and the association on the other. And in a subdivision where the association has maintenance responsibilities related to the residential unit itself, in other words, they have the exterior maintenance responsibilities, maybe even more, it's really important to create a maintenance matrix which identifies by column and identifies like garage door, paint only.
Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you here, Wayne, because we're just ready for a break again. I think that's a great topic for our last and final segment we'll get into. Join us again in just a few minutes after this quick break, and Wayne and I will get into what that maintenance matrix is all about and why that needs to be a part of our governing documents. Stay with us.
Diamond Fusion, a patented award-winning technology that transforms ordinary shower glass and porcelain into low-maintenance surfaces, used by manufacturers like DuPont and by homeowners and resorts to maintain a clean image and save money while making life easier by making cleaning easier. Call 773-2825.
Hey Tim, what's this I hear about your sponsorship with CAI doing so well?
My sponsorship in the television show?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's one of the best things I've done for the CAI, besides being a volunteer, that is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So is it helping you?
Well, it's helping me and it's helping my bottom line. I'm getting customers and making money.
What a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And you can have that opportunity too. Give a call to the CAI office so you can be a sponsor on our CAI report. The telephone number is 760-341-0559.
Communication is the key to successful homeowner association management. BestHOA.com specializes in creating websites that serve as the ultimate in communication tools. Taking advantage of technology to help association managers and board members efficiently and promptly deliver information is what BestHOA.com does best. Call BestHOA.com.
Whoa, check out the action on the net.
No, Oscar, stay away from the net.
Not net, internet.
Wow, it's so fast.
That's because it's Roadrunner high-speed internet service. It blows everything else away.
Hello, what's that?
All right, he's looking for another fish.
Oh, quick buy, quick buy.
So, you're from eBay.
Is that anywhere near Chesapeake Bay?
Hello, I'm Stephen Shuey. I want to talk to you just for a few moments about the budget process. You know, if you're on the board of directors for your homeowners association, setting that budget's a pretty critical thing, I know. It's a kind of a fine line between making the budget right for your homeowners who never want to see increases and having a budget that's set correctly so you can afford to get the jobs done you need to have done. My recommendation is set the budget correctly for the jobs you want to have done. Your homeowners will be happy. They may groan a little bit at the first sight of an increase, but in the long run, you need to have increases to keep up with the cost of living. Do what's right. Have a good time and do it right. Welcome back. My name is Stephen Shuey and I'm sitting here with Wayne Guralnick of Guralnick and Gilliland, and we're talking today about homeowner associations' governing documents and what it takes to change them, why it's important to change those documents. Wayne, when we left off, we just got started and I had to interrupt you on this part of the governing documents, which is a maintenance matrix, and you were just about to tell us why that's important and what that involves. Carry on with that.
Sure. In the older documents, they generally had a clause which talks about obligations of the owner to maintain and obligations of the association to maintain the areas where the residential units are located. Well, there's all sorts of interpretations on that issue. You get 10 lawyers in a room, you might get 10 interpretations, unfortunately.
You mean the documents that the old days just weren't written well? They didn't have enough clarity?
I would suggest that, plus the fact that people are getting more sophisticated and they're trying to get the association to pay for fixes that aren't necessarily the association's responsibility. So now the manager calls and says, well, who's responsible for maintaining the windows? Who's responsible for maintaining the tracks in a sliding glass door? Who's responsible for the rat that came into my house in an opening? You name it, we've been there. I've got bees in my wall. Who's responsible? What you're looking for is trying to, instead of looking at words inside a set of CC&Rs, you incorporate by reference an exhibit which identifies a maintenance matrix. So you create, for example, areas such as maybe the garage area. And then you put in the line items, you'd say garage door, hardware, you can put the roof system of the garage.
So each and every component of the person's home and surrounding area is identified so in this table and identified then as to who's responsible for what component part.
Exactly. What you do after you create the line item, you then put down on the column, you put owner, association, or utility company. And the biggest area, of course, is those utilities, and in particular, water leaks. You want to clearly identify who's responsible for those slab leaks. For example, if you're trying to make it so that the association is limited in nature for those water leaks, then you'd say from the area from the meter box to the first point of intrusion into the unit, but excluding anything underneath the slab. Well, that'd be the association, and then obviously anything underneath the slab and inside the unit would then be the owner. Putting the onus on the owner, and why that makes sense is it's not fair for some owner on one side who has, let's say, just some indoor-outdoor carpeting to have to pull that up and fix the slab leak. That's $1,000. But you, as meticulous as you are, you have this travertine floor, and to fix that requires $15,000 fix. I think that's unfair to put that as an association obligation and unfair to the owners who have to pay that burden.
So putting this all together in the governing documents and clarifying who's responsible for each and every little situation is helpful to the association and to the owner who lives there, so when he buys into the community, he says, here's my obligation, here's the association's obligation.
Exactly. It goes back to that communication factor. If you have this maintenance matrix that just identifies pretty much everything,
Right.
now you could say to the owner, as the manager, look on page 55 on that maintenance matrix. It clearly identifies that you're responsible for the doorbell.
Yeah.
Which is, the last topic is anyone who's attempting to restate governing documents and their counsel doesn't go out actually on site and take a tour, or maybe even two if necessary, to understand how it mechanically works. What is basically being maintained presently, and where are your problems?
Yep.
To be solved through this set of CC&Rs. Because you're trying to solve problems, trying to create communications, easy to read. Those are your goals. You should be able to accomplish those.
That was certainly the goals when you and I worked on ours, because we did have some complications as far as the documents being hard to understand. All that developer language was in there and it had to go. In our case, the choice was, rather than try to make changes to an existing document, we said, look, Steve, let's start fresh. There's been so many changes, we'll give it a fresh set of documents, but still you incorporated all of the proper language to identify who owns what and what properties are defined, and all that got done. And it's really a blessing to have attorneys who understand that stuff, because managers and board members don't understand all that meticulous detail. That's why attorneys need to be involved in the process. And it's certainly important to understand that's why getting them looked at periodically to be updated is so important.
I have to close with this comment, and that is, please tell the whole world the vote count on your amendment of the governing documents, because it's a first for me. How many voted in favor?
Well, I have to tell you, at Desert Island, it was kind of neat. We have a great community, and the community is working together, and we hope that all your communities work toward working together. At Desert Island, I was telling you earlier how we had a 68% of the people voted. It was 100% of that 68% that voted. Every one of them voted yes on the changes. You may have to ask why that happened, and I'll be telling you about that in a different segment when we come back another day. I'll bring in one of our board members who helped make that accomplishment work, and you'll see how it is you can get, in your community, get votes where 100% of the people are capable of voting something in. But yeah, Wayne, it wouldn't have happened without you.
Oh, thank you
and
very
what
much.
you did to create those documents and have them work well. And I know as management and our board of directors, we all played a part in making this whole thing work. You can see now that the changing to the governing documents is important, and what it takes to do that. We just kind of barely touched the surface on that in this short segment here today. Hopefully I'll have a chance to talk further about it from a different perspective on the board members' side in a different show. Meanwhile, we look forward to you joining us one more time again next time we're on the air. Thanks again, Wayne, for being with us today. Sure appreciate that. Join us next time on the CAI Report.